So as we see, so when we look at the reign of Ramesses II, so from 1279 to 1213, we see that he reigned for about 60 to 70 years. And this is a really long time in ancient Egypt, and generally in ancient times. And that was also a problem, because Ramesses II reigned so long, after him only short-lived and old kings came. And therefore, so political succession and kingship succession in Egypt became again unstable. And then they had a new threat, the Libyans. The Libyans, they were attacking from the west to get into Egypt. And these two factors led, only 30 years after Ramesses II died, this led to the decline of the 19th dynasty. And therefore, the 20th dynasty came to power. And the first king of the 20th dynasty was Ramesses III. And he is also the last king of the golden age of the New Kingdom. And Ramesses III wanted to imitate the great Ramesses II. That means Ramesses III also wanted to build as many buildings as possible. And some of these buildings we can see today. For example, his tomb in the Valley of Kings, which we can see in Thebes, which is really large. And also a large building that we can see today is his mortuary temple at Medinet Habu in Luxor, which is also very well known. Additionally, Ramesses III, he also wanted to please gods, and he was the king who made many gifts to the religious, to the Egyptian religious leaders. For example, he gave them 100,000 servants, he gave them 30,000 square kilometers of land, and he gave them 330 kilograms of gold. And we can imagine when one makes that many gifts to the religious leaders, that the power of the religious leaders grows, that the power of the king goes down. And this became a problem later. Now, what was the foreign policy of Ramesses III? The problem was that Egypt at that time was already starting to decline. The power got weaker and weaker. And we see that the king does not fight anymore in the faraway remote areas. So, for example, here in Upper Palestine or here in Libya or here in Nubia, but he was fighting in the country's core. So the king had to fight in Egypt itself. So first there were the Libyan attacks. The Libyan attacks, they attacked from the west and they plundered the western Nile Delta. 2 times, 1178 and 1172, but Ramesses III could successfully defeat the Libyans 2 times. So in this way, he could defeat the Libyans and drive them back to Western Africa. And then, 1175, we have the Dorian invasion. And we do not know who the Dorian people are, so they're also called the Sea Peoples. But what we know is that they invaded the eastern Mediterranean Sea region from the west, and this led to the decline of the Meonian and the Mycenaean high cultures in Greek. They also invaded today's Turkey, which eventually led to the decline of the Hittite Empire. So the Hittite Empire ceased to exist. And they also invaded Egypt. So this was a problem for Ramesses III. And Ramesses III went to war with the Sea People, and at the Battle of Delta, 1175, he could defeat the Sea People. So actually, Egypt was strong enough to go against the Sea People, and Egypt was the only nation or the only state in the Middle East region which could survive the attacks of the Sea People. Then, because the Sea People couldn't defeat Egypt, they went to Palestine. So Palestine was under Egyptian control, but because the Sea People now invaded Palestine, the Egyptians lost Palestine. And we also believe today that the Philistines, which we read, for example, much about in the Bible, that they were also the Sea People who, from Crete, from this Greek island, how they invaded the Palestine and settled there. So Ramesses III was able to defeat all the enemies of Egypt, but he had to pay a heavy price for it. Because the many wars and the strong but very costly army took much money. So also keeping the mud, so building all the temples, giving all the offerings and the gifts to satisfy the gods. So we saw that he made gifts with 100,000 servants or 330 kilograms of gold. That was very much money that was lost. And therefore, Egypt at around 1100 BC was almost bankrupt. And this again led to being the state not being able anymore to ensure proper administration and distribution of food and crops. So the state was not able anymore to care for its people and to ensure stability in Egypt. And this again led to social discord. There were demonstrations, palace intrigues, workers' rebellions against the Egyptian kings and the Egyptian rulers. So we see at the end of Ramesses III's reign, Egypt was economically and politically before collapse. We also see, when we look at the international politics, that Egypt's domination vanished. So the Libyans, as I already told, they attacked the western part of Egypt, and they took the western part of Egypt from the Egyptian Empire. Also, we see that the Sea People, they conquered Palestine and took the Levante away. And then we also see that in this time, because Nubia saw the weakness of Egypt, Nubia, they made itself independent. And when we look at the Egyptian borders at the end of Ramesses III's reign, we see that all the Nubian, the Libyan, the Palestine, that those areas, they're all lost. And only the Egyptian mainland remains in the hand of Egypt. At the end of Ramesses III, we see that he left his successor a broken kingdom without any money, an exhausted and drained land which was using its last resources and was going to its end. And then, when we look at the following kings of the 20th dynasty, we see that it was just in decline. For example, Ramesses IV, he installed Ramesses-Nagt, a very powerful scribe. But he lost more and more power to him. So the position of the king got weaker and weaker. Then Ramesses V or Ramesses VI, they went on to civil war with each other. This further weakened Egypt. Then we have attacks from the foreign people. Again, during the time of Ramesses IX and the 10th, there were severe attacks from the Libyans. And then finally, when Ramesses XI came to power, he lost the capital city of Thebes to high priest Herihor, because this high priest claimed just independence from the Egyptian pharaoh. And exactly this was the point of the beginning fragmentation of Egypt into several local rulers and local states, and Egypt drifting off into the third intermediate period.